Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CODEstantine Meetups. My name is Bratislav, and I'll be a host of today's CODEstantine Meetup. Today's talk will take you to a programmer's journey. You'll get to hear more about different developers' environment and how to navigate every single one of them. I would like to say big thank you to our dear friends from Vitset that are today's Meetup supporters. So Vitset is actually a tech company from Belgrade that specializes in building digital health solutions. They have over 15 years of experience with building products for healthcare industry. And you can find more about them in the expo area. That's actually an icon just below the stage. You can find it there, and you can talk to their representatives over there during or after the meetup. So, as you may know by now, CODEstantine is developers community founded in Serbia, and we are expanding further with every single CODEstantine meetup almost every week. And we also strive to gather top developers and experts to talk about a variety of different tech topics. We've organized more than 10 CODEstantine meetups with more to come in the upcoming months. You can check out everything on our website, CODEstantine.com, for more details about the talks and speakers. I would also like to mention CODEstantine is organized by No Limit Hub, which is an organization from Serbia that has been working on strengthening entrepreneurs, startups, and tech communities and companies. So today we have a little weird situation where we have two Bratislavs on the stage, which is, in my experience, very uncommon, but actually super cool. So Bratislav, welcome on board. Thank you for taking the time to join us today and share your vast experience. So Bratislav has many years of experience working in tech environments with people from several countries, and he himself was once a developer, and now his focus is project management, team management, setting up a small company for growth, and leading delivery managers to greatness, as he liked to say. So, and currently he is a delivery director at Vitset. Before we start, I'd like to encourage all the participants to ask as many questions as they want and be active in the chat on their right-hand side. And Bratislav, the floor is now yours.
Well, thank you, Bratislav. This is a strange thing to say for me.
Yeah, for me too.
Well, Bratislav is thanking another Bratislav, which is not a common thing today. But nevertheless, thank you very much, and for those kind words about me. Yeah, vast experience. I think 15 or 16 years in tech industry. I have started back in 2005 or 6. I was a developer. I started as a developer within the bank. It was in internal IT. So let's say a rough start. And after working in 2 banks, I joined Comtrade. Maybe you heard about this company. This is a pretty large company here in Serbia. I think one of the largest IT companies. And after 5 years spent there, I moved to Emric, which is a product company. We will talk more about what is a product company, what is outsourcing company, what is project, and so on. But Comtrade led me to Emric, which is a product company, a different kind of company, dealing with fintech products. And finally now, just briefly, I have joined Vicert as a delivery director for, I don't know, a couple of months. I have been in this position, and I have a great responsibility today. I mean, I'm basically taking care of all the developers within this company, meaning 50 plus developers. And my actual job is for them to have everything that they need. They can learn, they can grow here. And my responsibility is to provide that kind of an environment for them. So I take that, I mean, being a developer myself, I take that as a pretty serious job to do. Over the course of the years, I have been on almost every role. Uh, I have worked as a developer, as a team lead, project manager, tech lead, scrum master, and now line manager, which I am today. So basically, all the roles within one team or in development lifecycle, I have faced, and I struggle with it for some time. And I think I came out stronger after each of these experiences that I had. So I'm here today as I wouldn't say a lecturer, but someone who can share that experience and share my view on what can you expect and what is your role as a developer today within some kind of company, and what kind of a company you're facing today. We will talk more in the first part of this lecture or presentation, meetup. I would like to ask all of you to join in, to speak up. So I would like to hear your experiences that you had or you have. You don't have to name the company. You don't have to, tell names. But I would like to hear from you your experience, and especially if you don't agree with some of my views that I maybe have. So without a further ado, welcome to the Hitchhikers. I hope you can see the shared screen right now. Welcome to the Hitchhiker's Guide through a programmer's developer's journey. I will talk first about the types of companies that we face today out there on the market. So there are a couple of types of the companies in the IT industry. And the first one that I have recognized, I mean, this is not an official, type of a companies or whatever, but something that I have recognized during the years in this industry that really can determine the way that you are working. So basically, I have split companies into groups according to how it will be for you as a developer within that company. So the first company on my list would be the outsourcing company. I think the outsourcing company has the simplest way or the simplest business case out there, because they're basically finding a project on one side and they're finding people on the other side, and they're just selling the hours, the man hours, just a bit for the bit higher price than they are basically paying the developer. So everything about these companies are determined from this. The only thing that matters within these companies is the profit, or that difference between the prices of a developer and for how much they are actually selling that man hour to the clients. So developer in this kind of a setup is working either as a one-man show, one person, or he joins the external team, the team within the client or the client's company. There is also a third way of cooperation within this setup, the outsourcing setup. And that is when you're basically outsourcing the whole team to the client. Even though you're outsourcing the whole team, this is not a real Scrum team. You're missing the product owner, you're missing the Scrum Master, and so on. So basically, you are just leasing a couple of guys to your client. So this is not a real team. And what comes out from this is basically that you are, as a developer, you are not involved in the project. You're just getting the tasks. They're just throwing the work at you. And you can't influence the way that you will be working. You can't influence on what type of project you will work. You can't influence what tools will be used or whatever setup you are using and so on. So basically you don't have, you have zero control over how the things are done and what you will be using and what environments you're going to use. Another thing that we should pay attention to is that the reason for having the outsourcing agreement in the first place. You know, you have a tight deadline as a client, so you have to find the outsourcing company to help you out, or you don't have enough knowledge within your company to finish the project, or you're dealing with some outdated technologies, and again, you need someone from outside of your company to step in and finish the job. So those reasons are always putting developers in a kind of a rough position. So you will be working either under pressure or with outdated technologies, with legacy code, and those things we are basically trying to avoid in our careers. So the worst case scenario when it comes to outsourcing that comes to mind right now to me is the situation when you have an outsourcing agreement, and then suddenly your client is changing the strategy or changing the budgets and so on. So what happens then is that you can be let go without any preparation. You can be let go without any further notice, and so on. So it's a kind of situation that you would like to really avoid in your career. Mostly, when we talk about outsourcing, it's a setup where you can maybe earn the most, but the way you are working, the way that you are working, and the situation that you find yourself in is not really a desirable one. So we said a couple of things about the outsourcing company, and let's move on to another type that I have seen and that I recognize today in this sense, that is a project organization or company. Project organization is basically a company that used to do, let's say, a custom development. Back in the day when I starting, there was a lot of these companies out there, and those companies, they started. Just a second, let me adjust. Okay, so those companies basically started when development was predominantly, I think, custom. You didn't have enterprise softwares. You had a few products out there on the market, so companies were looking a way to implement some systems that they needed, and they were hiring those kind of companies to produce a software that they need. But as IT industry evolved, basically the part of the custom development was shrinking, and what we have today is kind of a digital transformation companies or system integration companies that were back in the day that used to be a custom development company. So those kind of companies most often basically introduce big enterprise systems like SAP or Navision into some other big organizations also. In these kinds of companies, you still have that custom development, but it is usually within that large system that they are working with. So they are basically a vendor for SAP, and they do all the customizations for their customers over that, or using that as an environment. For the custom development part, basically in both cases, if you're doing something from scratch or you have a sub that you want to introduce somewhere, so in both cases, you can see projects being set up and led. The PM methodology in this case is not really an important thing to discuss today, but they have a system, they have a methodology, they have processes, and so on. So everything is clearly defined. So you have a team, you have the roles within the team clearly defined, which role is responsible for what, at what stage of a project, what is expected of each role, and so on. You usually have, for example, a business analyst, you have a project manager, you have a development lead, you have the team, which consists usually 3 to 5, 6 developers, and you have a QA within that team, or you have a whole team of QAs, and then you have a DevOps guy or a team that basically serves all other teams or serves other team members. And within that kind of a setup, you would expect everything to run smoothly, everything to be done, in timely manner, everything is defined clearly, and so on and so on. Well, in real life scenarios, it's really not like that. Why? Well, you have the sales in the company, so that's why. So what does the sales does? It tries to lower the cost and sells more expensively. So you have that discrepancy that is usually a point where the delivery or development and sales clashes, because delivery wants to do things, well, I wouldn't say right, but with a higher quality and so on, and the sales is trying just to lower the cost. And in those kind of situations, and you will see that in every type of IT company today. I mean, without any doubt, you will see that clash and that conflict between the sales and delivery. But within the project company, what happens is that something is agreed and something is committed. We're committing to something to the client, but the project itself is not set up properly, meaning you didn't staff the project correctly, or the timelines are basically agreed by the sales guy, not by a project manager or system architect or whoever leads the project in that case. So what happens is that you are in the rush from the beginning. And if we are talking about a long-running project, then those things are not really visible in the beginning. So you have usually on the big projects, you have multiple teams, a lot of people working, you're creating a big complicated architecture and so on. But as the project progresses and time goes by, what happens is project manager realizes, oh, I don't have time, I don't have money, I don't have the budgets, and so on. And then we are faced with the cost cutting and deadlines that are approaching like lightning fast and so on. So basically you're working under a lot of pressure. You're either working for 2 persons because we don't have enough money left on the project to spend, or you're working again for 2 persons because we don't have enough time. So the reality for the project organization is, at least from my point of view, what I have seen so far is that when you let project start in a manner that is not, let's say, right for the situation, when not all the requirements are met, meaning the scope is not defined well, or the timelines are not defined well, or staffing requirements or skill sets needed, then you are probably gonna lose something on the project, either in quality or in the deadlines or in something else. So those kind of situations are pretty common in this type of an organization. The next type of the company that we are going to talk about today is a product company. So the product company, you can say that you have different types of product companies. I will talk about, let's say, 3 or 4 other different kinds of companies, because depending on a product, you can say that there is a product company that deals with the online, it offers an online platform, a web application. You can see a different type that offers basically a service through their own APIs, which are consumed by other systems. Those are fairly similar. Then you can have a product company that has a standalone product, which can be, for example, mobile app, or can be a desktop application like Word or other Acrobat Reader or something else. And then you can have a product company that has a large enterprise system, like I said, SAP or core banking system. You probably know about Asseco. Asseco is a product company, and they have a large core banking system out there on the market. So basically, everything that is offered to the market and can be consumed by a third party is basically a product, and the company that deals in this business is a product company. So that is the main characteristic. But what are the differences between the product companies? Well, sorry, I had to drink a little bit of water too, because my voice is starting to break up. Well, I mentioned you have a web platform, or you have the APIs and so on. So basically, that is one instance, just one instance of their product. And what happens with the firm, with the company that is producing it, and how does it looks from inside? Usually, those companies don't have really a big development centers. They don't have a large number of developers. So they are much more fast-paced. They don't really have processes clearly and strictly defined, and so on. And they usually basically practice extreme programming, which is cool. But they have some other things that are, well, not that cool. If you're practicing extreme programming, then that means that you will consequently have less documentation, which means that the onboarding of new developers will usually be a little bit harder, and it will take a lot of effort from a new guy to step in and start to be productive. The other type of a company that produces a product company, is when a company has a standalone product, like I said, Adobe Acrobat, for example, or a mobile app. What they do is they release a version of it and they sell it, and there is no contract between the end user and the company that produces. You have a standalone product that you use, that you consume as is. This means that you will have to put on the market something that will have to be, highly configurable, and it has to run on different kinds of configurations, different kind of computers, and so on. So that part of your product is pretty complicated, meaning that the architecture of that kind of a product will be quite complicated, quite complex. That means that development centers for these kind of products are usually much bigger. For example, development center for SQL Server is here in Belgrade, and it's quite big. It's quite comprehensive. But again, SQL Server is a pretty big product. And what we have in these companies is that you have much more strict procedures. You know how the development really looks like, and it's set in stone. So you can't really have that flexibility like when you're working in a small development groups or teams. You have to abide by the rules that are set for the whole organization. And you have to do that because, when there is a lot of people, a lot of developers collaborating on a single product, you need to be, in sync with each other. And without the process that is, communicated and accepted by the whole community within that company, you can't really have that kind of a product. And you can't really have a development that is successful. So that is basically the third product company out there, and there is one that is, I think, the most robust out there, and that is a company that produces an enterprise grade or an enterprise sized system for the market. Having that kind of software out there means that you will probably have, a complex architecture, that you will have to have a really, really complicated branching strategy for your product, because you have to maintain the code base for all the versions that are out there, installed, released to your customers. And also you will have to have a configurable product, not configurable just by the user interface configurable, but you have to basically implement different legislations in different countries, different kind of processes within the different organizations. When you're implementing, for example, the banking system or something in insurance, you have two banks that have completely different, they have the same business model. They're approving loans, but on the other hand, they can have completely different processes, and that is something that your software needs to implement. So it has to be highly configurable. That means that you will have, complex architecture, but you will also have a pretty complicated code base with, hundreds of different projects and tens probably of solutions within your system. So what does that mean for you? We will see later on, but it means that it will be a lot of talking within these companies, a lot of talking, a lot of planning when you have a complicated system kind of figures. But then again, you will always know when something is defined as your task, that is, in 99% of the time, it's defined well, and you can always count on that you will have everything that you need for you to solve the problem and to finish the task. The problem with these companies lie in some other field, and those are the technologies that are used, because those systems, have been out there for sometimes decades. The product that I worked in previous company was, I think, 15 years or 16 years old. So you had, parts of the code, those holes that were, written like 15 years ago. So a lot of legacy code, a lot of DevOps mumbo jumbo. But again, for you as a developer, if you don't mind those things, you will have a smooth sailing because you won't really have much problems during the task execution on your side. You will have everything that you need. Okay, so it's questions time. I will take a couple of minutes to answer the questions. First of all, let me ask you all. Please post your comments, questions. I would like this to be more of a discussion than just me, talking about my thoughts. So Mikhailo Stankovic is saying product-oriented companies are very cool to me personally, but I think it's difficult to succeed as a startup and funding is quite small for our country. Well, I can only say that, yeah, I agree. And maybe you will notice further on that there are no startups in the types of companies that I recognize because, the startup itself, by definition, is just, the idea and the funding. There is no really an IT component in this. IT company, startup companies are usually heavily dependent on their IT component, on an app that you are building or a system or integration that you are building. But the problem is that a startup as itself, it's not a development company by definition. But the thing that you mentioned is that it is a problem to get the funding here in Serbia for many reasons. I wouldn't go into those right now. But if the startup is from the IT world, it will probably end up as a product company. And I like that because I also like the product companies as a place where a developer can really grow pretty nicely. Especially if you are a junior developer, then it can be a good place for you. So further on, he says that, does it seem logical to start with outsourcing and then transition to project or product approach? Do you have a tip on how to get started and how to organize the initial company setup and decide what to do at first? So it depends. It always depends. I mean, if you are starting with your own idea, then try to be as agile as you can. Don't bring too much procedures. Don't involve too much rules. Basically, go hands, knees deep into the code, and try to get MVP, the smallest chunk of your idea out there on the market, and start snowballing from there. Basically, that would be my idea on how to start, because the start is, I think, it's the crucial moment in your development when you're starting a company. And it's a moment when you can basically make it or break it. So get the most minimal viable product out there, and then start fundraisers, get investors into the story, and then move on rather to a product than to project company. Okay, Mikhailo, I hope I answered your question. George Dimitrievich, hi, as I'm working as an UI UX designer, I'd like to know what kind of environment would allow me to express my creativity the most. Oh, again, it depends. I think you will be hearing these words pretty often today. It depends on what you like. Do you like a fast-paced environments, or you like to take it slow and basically take the time to learn rather to be thrown into the fire? For the UX UI designer, I don't think that product company is the right place to be, because they basically have their UX UI design needs already fulfilled. They have a design for a product. But where you can maybe thrive the most is a project, or even better, service company. I think the service company would be the best fit for you, because you will have much larger projects, longer running projects, and you can also learn a lot during the duration of these projects. So I think the service company that we will talk about right now is the right place for you. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, and I don't hear.
I think there's one more from, it's one more from Milica Mitic. She asks, which one did you enjoy more? Or do you enjoy more?
Oh,
outsourcing or project or product environment?
Well, that's a tough one, because I had a different role in each company that I was working on, but the one that I find the most interesting to work with is my current company, because it's a unique challenge for me. It's a complete switch from a tech guy to totally managerial role. But if you ask me where I grew the most, I think it would be either Comtrade, or I don't know, maybe here. I think I'm learning a lot here, but it's not about the technologies, but more about how to handle people, and take care of people, and have processes, and be good with the client side of the story, because at the end of the day you have a client, and you have to fulfill their needs, basically. So I think this is the most challenging, and so far it's been really fun. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, I think that will be it by now. Now, if you agree, we can continue with the presentation.
Yeah. And guys, feel free to drop in your questions at any time during the presentation. As soon as I take a break a bit, I will read them and answer them to you. And speak up. I mean, give us your thoughts on these companies and your experience with these kind of companies. So, like I said, the next company that we have out there are service companies. I don't know if you are familiar with this term, service company. So let me just briefly explain when I say service company, what I'm basically referring to. The service company is a company from the IT or ICT world that offers a service to third-party customers, to third-party companies. Oh, sorry, my presentation skipped. What we do in service companies is, if we talk about development, is offer development, the whole development cycle, to other companies that need the help in that department, or they need the whole product to be developed by the service company. When I say the whole product, that usually means you have to do a bit of an analysis, you have to do a design, you have to make the architecture of the new system or the product that you will be working on, and then go into the development. And then basically you are responsible for all the tasks and all the work that is to be done on that product. So to offer that kind of a service is pretty hard. And probably you're now asking yourselves, okay, but what is the difference between the project and the service company? Well, when you have a project, you are specifically engaged to finish, one slice of work, for example, a website. When you are offering a service, that is much longer engagement, meaning even if you are bringing up a website, you will be working on its upgrades, you will be working on its maintenance, and so on. The other thing about the service companies that differentiates them from project companies or product companies is that they're usually basically focused on one domain, specific domain. Weissert is a service company, and we focus on health. So that means that we will know a lot about the legislation behind the health. We will know a lot about protocols. We will know a lot about the integrations, the APIs out there, and so on and so on from the health world. Which means that if you are a health organization or like Mihailo said, a health startup, you will ask Weissert to provide you with the whole solution because you already know, you have the know-how from the health tech industry. You won't go and hire someone that has never seen health or dealt with the health tech. So the service companies are usually pretty narrowly focused, in this case in health. And this is what actually brings the real value to the customer. It's not about the technologies. I mean, it goes without saying that you will be an expert in I don't know, Node.js or C#. But the point is, for the customer, the real value is your knowledge of the system or the processes in health or APIs, like I said, integration part of the whole story. So what service companies are putting out there is their domain knowledge, know-how, the situations where they can really basically boost your business by bringing in their experience that they obtained on previous projects and from the other companies they worked with. So it is a big plus for this kind of companies. What it means for you is that you will have, sorry guys, you will have much longer lasting projects. You can influence the way that you are working. You can in most cases you can choose your tech stack. So you can choose technologies, you can choose environments, you can choose tools, platforms, and so on. And also you will have control over the product. So you have a freedom to suggest things to the customer. You can say, okay, this is nice, your idea is great, but did you think about this or that? And can we improve this in some way, and so on? And that is the part that I like the most about this type of the company. The freedom that you have to improve the product. I mean, at least for me, you know, the biggest thrill that I get from being a developer is to help my users, because everything that I implement, each feature that I work on, makes life a little bit easier for the person that is actually using the software. So when I'm building the whole product for someone, and if I say, okay, we can have an improvement here, and they agree, and we actually implement it, then you know it awakens a certain sense of pride for me. So the service company is basically the last one that we talked about, and that's all nice. Those are the types of the companies. But where is a developer? Where are we in this, you know, in these different setups? And those are the things that I would like to look into with you guys right now. First, in the outsourcing company, just briefly, you will always be wondering what to do, how to do it. Am I getting tasks? Are those tasks, you know, defined well, or user stories written well, and so on? So it's a kind of confusing environment, at least as I see it. Second of all, it's the project company, where you will be, working under deadlines, and you will be always scrutinized. Did you do this? Did you finish this? How much more work you have to do? You completed. I mean, I just love the question: is this 80% done or 60? I mean, when you ask a developer some kind that kind of a question, I mean, I think most of developers go nuts, because I don't really know what is 100% until I implement it 100%. So that's another setup that we are dealing with. The third one is product company. And I already said, you will be talking, you will be planning a lot, you will be designing a lot, but I think that's like a 60 or 70% of your time will go into the planning sessions, review sessions, design sessions, and so on. And only about the 40% you will be, or 30% you will actually be coding. I mean, you have to go to lunch, right? So it's like 10% of your time. So I think it boils down to 30% of your time actually coding. And the last one, it's a service company. Like I said, it's more of a team effort to help your customer, reach a point where they want to be. And for me, it's the most open and the environment. It's the right kind of a balance between the processes and the bureaucracy that you really have in product companies, and that open mindset that you have, or extreme programming mindset that you have in startups or in project organizations, or some of them. So in a nutshell, that would be it. But there is much more to it. When we look at the outsourcing company and what it does and what you are doing, I mean, outsourcing is pretty unstructured a company, and you usually work as a solo player. You don't have a team. You are just thrown at. You just have, tasks and work thrown at you. Sorry, I have to stop this presentation again. Okay, and rewind it. So basically, in the outsourcing company, you are a code factory, and it leads to many, many, many hours of overtime, which all of us really like, right? And you're usually working for the companies that are not IT companies. You're working for a company that is, for example, a bank or some other type. And what happens is they don't really get you. They don't really understand what the development process means and what you need to finish your work. So there will be a lot of impediments on your way, setting up environments, setting up accesses, getting the data, testing, and so on. So a lot of problems for you in your everyday work, which means that you should be pretty resourceful. And basically, the outsourcing, I think it's the best fit for the outsourcing kind of engagement is to have a senior developer working on those kind of tasks, because the senior developer has seen a lot of different setups, work on things that are not just code related but more of a platform related. He had done a lot of configuration of environments and so on. So I think the best fit for this kind of engagement is a senior developer. As I said, I think I mentioned you can also have a setup where for example, a product company that actually is in the development business, software developer business, is hiring the outsourcing company to help or even develop the whole thing itself. That is a little bit of I think it's a better situation, a little bit better, because at least on the other side, you have someone who understands what development really is. So they know how to set up the environments for you. They know how to structure your work or define user stories for you, and so on. So it's a bit better of a setup for outsourcing. Moving on, it is a project company. So in this kind of a company, you have I think much better positioned. You're better positioned as a developer here. The project should be set up from the beginning in the right way. Like I said, I think I mentioned. You know the timelines, you know the scope, or at least you should know the scope, but at least you know your role, and the development cycle is clearly defined. So basically, you know when you finish your chunk of work that a QA guy or a girl will take over, do the testing, or automated test will fire after it builds and before it goes into the production environment. So in this kind of companies, you usually have much better setup to work as a developer. And I think in these kind of setups, I think it's a good place to start, basically. Project or service company is a good place for a junior developer to learn and grow, opposite to outsourcing, which is, I think, a hell for a junior to work with, or even impossible for them to work with in the outsourcing company. For the project company, there are some downsides for the project company, unfortunately. The project company only cares about the profits. The only thing that matters is profit. And when you measure profit, you have a revenue and you have a cost. The revenue is usually known beforehand. When you sign a contract, you say, okay, I will do this project for approximately this amount of money, and that is a revenue for you. And on the other side, you have a cost. And if you are late with the project, that means that you're burning much more time than what was actually agreed. So that means that your cost goes up. And in those kind of situations, you probably have to sacrifice quality, or even the scope. You have to rescope in order to finish with at least something that can be released to the public. So in the project companies, you will probably work under pressure and not have as many overtime hours like in outsourcing, but usually you will end up with a fair amount of overtime. On the other hand, you can learn because different projects usually require different environments, different technologies, and you will be probably in a way forced to learn at some point something new. So it has a room for you to grow, but the problem with this is that it's not planned. So you don't have a system that supports you in your growth or in your career path. There is no room for you to learn within the company time. It is always, somehow understood that you will do it in your own time and come with the knowledge and bring that knowledge to the table. Okay, moving on, we'll talk about a little bit about the product companies and how it is for a developer to work within it. I was talking about 4 different kinds, but there are actually, I think, 2 kinds of product companies. In the smaller ones, they're usually, the startups that are planning to release a web service or a mobile app or some kind of API. You will have, a fun group of people who are just working together. So it's an informal team, and you will probably enjoy but pretty soon you will burn out because you will have to provide so much in extreme programming way, which means you don't have anything defined beforehand, you don't really have an agreement on the architecture and so on. So you will be burning a lot of midnight oil on these kind of projects. It can be fun, but it's some, it's for younger people who can really take this tempo. But on the other hand, you have those, robust, big product companies. I used to be a part of a company that is like that. It's pretty big. What you really have are strong processes for everything, including development. We were using Agile, so we were like Scrum by the book. But the problem is with these companies, you will have a really, really complicated architecture. So it is really hard to get into the code and go out and say, okay, I'm an expert, I'm a senior in this company right now, even though, I have like 10 years of experience in C#, but still, I'm not sure I'm a senior in this company, which is a large product company, because the product is so big that I can't know every module or every functionality in detail. A second thing is that when you're working with a complex system that has been been evolving and upgrading throughout a decade, there is a lot of independencies between the modules and so on. So I think the bugs are so so often produced. I think you're basically producing more bugs than functionalities here, because when you're fixing one bug, I can guarantee you will produce another in some other point in the application. And another thing that basically goes out from this is that a QA process for this kind of a huge products, enterprise grade software, is that you can't really have an automated tests in place. I mean, you can have them to some degree, but the real quality assurance or testing is done manually, which means for something that takes me like a couple of hours or one day to fix, the guys in QA usually spend 3 days testing. So the development cycle from the creation of a task or a user story until it goes at least to UAT, not the production, but the UAT is pretty long. So the work itself, it's pretty boring, at least for me, because you wait a lot, you plan a lot, and then you wait for a feedback like 5 days. I mean, I spend 2 hours coding and then 3 days waiting for a feedback, or the feedback comes in 2 months. I have forgotten what I was working on if the 2 months pass. What is interesting about these companies is also the complicated branching strategies, because they have to maintain all the releases that they had throughout the years, because some releases are still alive and kicking at some client's place or somewhere. So they have to maintain that, and usually you have like I don't know, you have to have a release version plus hotfix. So it's basically the most complicated branching strategy out there. It also complicates your work when get this branch. Oh, okay, wait a minute, I'm getting this branch, but I should fix this on this branch, and my customer is on 3.2 version, and should I work on hotfix, and where do I merge after that, and so on. So it can be quite tiresome working in this kind of an environment. On the other hand, I mean, there is a system in place for for learning and education, but usually you won't be really doing that because you don't have anywhere to implement that knowledge that you obtain, because the changes in those kind of systems that are so robust and so big are not that often. The point is that you will be probably using the legacy code. You will be using some rather old technologies, but still, I mean, if you choose to, you can learn. But the bummer is that you can't really implement that anywhere. Okay, I will take just a second here. I think I have a few questions coming in. Okay. Jovan Cvetanovic is asking, is there the good time under for a developer to start his own company? Well, there is actually. I mean, I can see today a lot of young people starting their own companies, getting the products out there. I have seen, I have met them, I know, but the problem is, if you don't have enough domain knowledge to go into that business, don't make a product just yet. So I would say, when you're on a brink to become a senior in a company, so like I would say 5 years time, then it would be, if you have the feel that you really know the domain you're working in, then go into the company creation, and try to have at least 2 customers before you set up the company. I can share my experience from like more than 15 years ago. I was using Delphi at the time. It's quite old technology, but what I made was a dental software, so you can run the whole dental office with it, and it was pretty good and pretty fast in comparison to what was out there, even in some Western countries. And I failed because I didn't know my market. I didn't know the domain well enough. I even had some marketing and so on, but I epically failed. But it was a great experience. So, as an answer to you, I think, when you feel knowledgeable enough, and when you have at least 2 customers or 2 projects that can really drive you through that first stages, would be the right moment. Okay, another question from Jovan. And which type of tech company would be the safest option to begin with? Okay, if we're talking about a junior developer, I would definitely say a service company, because they're domain focused and you have a lot of time to learn, not just to sit down and write code. And I think that the service company, it has that kind of organizational culture which recognizes the need of the customer, where they really need an expert. And for a service company to have an expert out there, he needs to learn and grow. So the service company is aware of that need, that it needs to invest into the developer so he can grow and become a senior or become a meteor as soon as he can. So I think that's the best place for a junior to start. Okay, thanks for that question. Mihailo has a question. No problem, Jovan. What would be your advice, to move through all the company types, or to pick what's best for you and go for it? Oh, that depends. My journey was I wouldn't say a typical, because when I started, the IT world in Serbia just looked so much different than it looks today. But I think that each experience, it's valuable. Even if you see a bad company, you know what not to do, and you can reflect on that and see how the things should be done, or what can be avoided, and so on. But if you're asking me, I think you can go from the service into the product company. That would be for me. If I was a junior right now, I would go into the service company and gradually go into the product company as but not as a senior developer, probably like a product owner when I grow enough to become a product owner, or a tech lead or something like that, or system architect. So for me, that would be the path. But it depends what you like. Do you like fast-paced environments, or slow environments? Do you like to be tucked in and safe, or you like to be exposed and thrown into fire? It only depends. It's basically up to you. So I hope I answered your question with this, but it really, it's up to you. Okay, moving on. Sorry. We were talking about, I think we talked about the project companies and the product companies, and now it's time for us to look a bit into the service companies, which is basically the last, I think the last step in evaluation of IT development companies. So they have a much more structural way of working. They have procedures, they have roles defined, and so on. They have their hierarchies, much more than you have those in outsourcing or project environments. But it's like a right mix between the bureaucracy and that you have in the product company, and what you have in outsourcing, which is like a chaos. You're just working in a chaos. You have a long-lasting projects in these companies. So, like I said, I mean, you can work on a project which is a greenfield project. Basically, you're working from scratch, from zero, you're starting with nothing, and build something for the client. So you have that opportunity to make a relationship with the client and get the thrill that I was talking about, and see your client actually growing with your software, and you can see how you can really help your client or your user, which is great. On the other hand, for developer, that means that he will be growing a lot, but in both tech domain, but also he will get to know the business side, a specific business. I'm always talking about help because it comes natural to me right now. But you will be learning a lot about the business domain, and believe it or not, I think I have a little bit younger audience right now. What may come as a surprise to you guys, I was surprised when I realized that, is not the knowledge of a technology is not something that is valued on the market, but mix of your knowledge of a technology and the domain that you're working on. If you know the banking or the banking processes or the banking products really well, the bank will pay double for you, because you can talk to the banking guys. If you know the processes in health, or standards, protocols in health, then you are worth like 5 times than just a regular developer that produces some code, because you can understand the other side, you can implement really what they want. They don't have to bother to explain like 10 times what they need to you, and so on. And plus, if you have a really good understanding of the domain, you can help them and suggest improvements and push the customer even to a higher level and give them even more quality than they really asked for. So there is a lot of learn. There is a lot of things to learn. And another thing that is also specific for the service company is that you are usually working with cutting edge technologies. You can choose them, but usually the customers want, the latest things. So you have that advantage over the other the guys that are working in a product company, especially a product company or in a project company and so on. On the other hand, you have a system that is, usually it's a kind of a Scrum or Scrumish process. You have product owners because you have to have them. You have Scrum Masters that will lead you through the process, and so you have a process set up. You have your work cut out for you, clearly defined. And on the other hand, you get to play around with a lot of CI/CD pipelines, the DevOps stuff, so you can automatically test. Usually it goes like that, test. So basically, what you're doing: commit code, merge branch. It goes into a build, then it deploys, tests, and deploys to a production or UAT environment. So it's like a perfect environment for you to develop to be a developer in, because you will see everything automated, and you will be a part, like I'm a part of automated system. So when I push commit or when I push the code, it automatically goes to production or to UAT. For me, coming from, I'm an old school guy. When I started working, it was like, okay, build it. You build, you get one file, it's a DLL or exe, and then copy paste it where you need it. And now everything goes, automatically. So that's kind of fun to see. And I think this is it from me. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I hope I brought interesting things to the table. Maybe cleared some questions. Maybe I opened some chapters for you to think about. I can only ask you. I can only invite you. You can write me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can always ask questions there, or start a conversation there, or come to Weissert, visit us, so we can have a live conversation if you want to. So that's it for me. I hope you had fun. I did. And if there are no more questions, then I will be closing this session.
That's great. Thank you so much, Bratislav, for the great presentation, and thank you, great audience, for the questions. But now I also have a few questions for you, Bratislav. And some of my friends who couldn't make it to the meetup told me to ask you, because they read your description and what you did in the past. And one of the repeating questions was, so many developers don't want to just work as developers for the end of their career. They want to level up to some management positions, and that's exactly what you did. So the question is, what's the right path to actually do it, and was it difficult for you? Did you know that you are going for that management positions, or did it just happen?
Oh, okay. The quick answer is don't do it, guys. It's much more fun to just code. No, I'm kidding, of course. But there are a lot of roles that you can take after being a developer. So, like I said, I mentioned you can be a product owner. The best product owner that I knew was actually ex-developer. So that's a fun thing, because when you know your product so good and you work on it like 5-6 years, then you are, in a place where you can take a product owner role uh, in a blink of an eye. If not that, maybe some kind of a project manager path would be like a good maybe fit for you, because you will have enough experience to know how the project flow goes. That's one thing, and you have seen so many impediments that you can basically predict them before they happen. And the role of a project manager is like an oil in an engine. You have to keep things running smoothly, and having that kind of a background as a developer or other technical person, you are a great fit. So I would say those two lines, if you don't really like to be a real manager, would be a good thing.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And do you still do programming?
I'm not allowed to say that. No, I actually during my working hours, I don't have the time for that.
Okay.
Neither do I have tasks for that. But I really still enjoy dealing with databases, with SQL Server, especially when you have some performance issues. So I do some technical stuff and I do code a bit, but I think it's mostly SQL these days. I haven't done a C# in like a year or more, unfortunately.
Yeah, that sounds very sentimental. So do you miss programming, like being on this
Yes,
position?
some things, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
but deadlines, being under pressure, I don't miss that.
Yeah.
But what I miss is fun of figuring things out, how this works or how do I implement it and so on.
Oh, sure. That makes sense. Okay, Vukashin asks, he says that he's still not completely clear about the difference between project and service companies.
Yeah.
Can you in 2 or 3 sentences explain?
Yeah. Just shortly, project companies do not have the focus. So basically, they will take any project, just finish it and be done with it. On the other hand, service companies are providing a service. So that means they will take a project from a domain, specific domain, for example, health, and deliver that to a client, but it doesn't stop there. That is a long-lasting relationship between the service company, which is providing a long-lasting service to the client, and they will do all the maintenance. Usually they will do all the upgrades, additional integrations, additional feature implementations, and so on. I hope it's a bit clear now.
Yeah, we hope we explained that, Vukashin. You just asked away if we need some more clarification. And tell me, Bratislav, so do you think that the industry that this tech company is in should affect choice when applying for a job for the young developers?
Yeah, that's a nice question, but it still depends on your preferences. I landed in banking, and I don't really like fintech, but it was it's kind of a chance that's a job that I got, and I was yeah, Bukashin, I'm glad that we got it. So I basically landed it by chance, and then like 6, 7, 8 years later, I was still in fintech. I mean, when I was in Comtrade, I was doing projects for government sector, which was a nice break from fintech. But then I got back, so it basically pulls you in. What I like about health specifically, for example, for me, it's a thrill of I'm affecting, I mean, millions of people, because when you get the product out there, millions of people will be using it, and you're basically dealing with someone's health. It's not about the money. When I come from the banking, it's all about, oh, how much interest I will get on this loan, how I should reject this application because the person is poor, and it doesn't really feel good when you're working on that kind of things. And then I I come into the health, and it's kind of a thrill when you can, you literally saved someone's life because you implemented, you have a gadget on a smartwatch. When you press it, or it's a smartwatch-like gadget, you just press it, and it calls the SOS dispatcher, it calls the hospital, and blah blah. So if you're not feeling well, you just press it. It means literally, I saved someone's life. I mean, I'm not doing the development right now, but I'm involved with that, and that's a thrill for me. So those kind of things, if you have a drive for them, go into that industry.
Mm-hmm. So it definitely depends on the motivation.
Yeah.
For the beginners, I think motivation is really a crucial
important. I agree.
Yeah. So bottom line, how do young developers decide what kind of tech company is for them? Do they just try it out and throw themselves into fire, or do they just pick it carefully and go with it?
Again, I think the whole purpose of this meetup was for me to share, the insight of how is to work in each of these organization or types of the organization. Again, it depends. Unfortunately, there is no one right answer for everyone. It depends on you. If you like to be, just thrown into the fire, then go into the outsourcing or go into the project companies. If you like slow-paced, secure environments, then go into the product companies. But be prepared, you will be learning quite less than you should, especially when you are a junior, because you have the strength, you have the time, you have the drive, then use it, learn. But if you like, environments where you can grow, but you will also sometimes, you will be thrown into the fire, even in the service companies, then go into the service companies. So for a junior, I think it's either project, not outsourcing, but either project or service. But I would root for service.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? I think we're kind of running out of time, so I would encourage everyone who didn't get to ask questions to send us a question at hi@codestantine.com, and we can then ask Bratislav what he thinks about that. So I don't see any more questions. In this case, we're gonna close up this meetup. So Bratislav, thank you for the great talk and for the time you dedicated to our community. I really hope everyone from the audience enjoyed it and found it useful. And for the ones who couldn't make it to the live event, we'll have it posted on our CODEstantine community website at CODEstantine.com. And I would also like to thank again Vicert for the support on this meetup. And for everyone who didn't get to ask questions, their representatives at the Expo booth, you can visit Vicert.rs or just find them on LinkedIn. That's what Milica recommended. So thank you all for being here and for supporting CODEstantine. And I hope I will see you on the next CODEstantine meetup.
Enjoy. My part. Thank you, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.